All right, so in this video, we're going to cover really just several manners of rotation, right? So, first off, let's start with, so obviously we're going clockwise first. Let's start with 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, so we're going to say CW 90 degrees, right? And of course, we mean we're turning the steering wheel to the right. Okay, so when we do that, just like you saw in the last video, okay, if you're going to do this by hand, right, and this is not in any way the most efficient way to do this, a lot of times you may not even have a picture to use. Anyway, so if I go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees clockwise, well, I see I'm going to want to come over here from quadrant 2 into quadrant 1. Okay, so that said, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, right? That's the length of this leg of my right triangle that I drew, and 1. So 1 this way, right? So then that means my new vertex, we're going to call it A2, will be right there, followed by, so these other ones are going to come analogously here, right? So I know uh, B2 is going to exist here, and C2 right there by it, right? And when I go ahead and draw it, okay, we're going to see that there's a pattern that occurs here, right? So A2 became 3 by 1. B2 became 4 by 3. Okay, C2 became 2 by 3. Okay, so let's look at any patterns that may emerge here from rotating 90 degrees, right? So starting with vertex A, we went from negative 1 by 3 to 3 by positive 1 now. Okay, so we see that X and Y traded places. Okay, so we can go ahead and write that down. Okay, so we went from X comma Y, right, to where we rotate 90 degrees clockwise. We become, well, we know YX. Okay, we flipped, we see that. And if we go ahead and focus on, um, dude, I clicked on the eraser. Why would it just not work? If we go ahead and focus on the next vertex, so let's look at B2 versus B1. Well, we see X and Y traded places, but we also notice, right, and we noticed it on the A vertices, we had sign changes. We had sign changes on all the X's. Okay, so that means when we make our generalization, we're going to have to take note of that, right? So Y stayed the same, and we had an X sign change. So if we go ahead and denote this in general, right, literally, when we rotate counterclockwise, we flip X and Y, and we're going to go ahead and say X sign change. Okay, so now let's rotate a little bit further clockwise. Okay, so we went 90 degrees. Let's go further than 90. Let's go in multiples of 90 because that's where we're going to keep it. We're going to go instead now 180 degrees. Okay, so we're going to go 180 degrees through to here. Okay, and we're still keeping it clockwise. So our next point of interest, we're going to continue going clockwise, except this time we're going to go a half circle. And we want to see what pattern arises from here, right? So when I go ahead and draw this out, so again, I'm 3, whoops, too many colors to change. I'm 3 by 1, right? And of course, I'm getting that from 3, 1. And hypotenuse comes out to here. My new vertex, my new A2 is here, right? And I know this is all going to stay relative. Okay, so I'm going to have to erase. to erase a little bit, give myself some room. But if I keep this, here we go. Okay, so then what does this mean? Well, A2 is there now, right? Which means where is B going to be? Well, I know that it's going to be not right there. Had a brain fart. I know that B is probably going to be, so if I just kind of follow it, it's going to be right over here. That's going to end up being B2. This is going to be C2. Okay, and that's the beauty of using this kind of a triangle to learn this from, right? And just notice that I'm using the wrong color for this. I need to be using blue because that's what I used last time. So I know C2 is going to be oriented on top now. B2 is going to be oriented on the bottom. Okay, and that's something I kind of forgot to mention in the last video. When we rotate, we don't have a change in area. It's obviously a rigid transformation, but we do have a change in space where it is, and we have a change in orientation of the vertices as we see plainly here. Anyway, going off on a tangent there. Okay, so let's look at the pattern. So A2, now I'm at 1 by negative 3. C2, now I'm at 2 by negative 3. And B2, now I'm at 3 by negative 4. Okay, so what did happen? And it's pretty obvious when you look just at the B's alone, right? So I had nothing flip. So when we rotate 180 degrees clockwise, I had nothing flip the way I did when I rotated 90, but I did have sign changes. I had a sign change from negative 3 to positive 3 down here, right? And I also had a sign change from positive 4 to negative 4. Okay, so I know that becomes my new rule, right? So when I go to write down my generalization, right, of 180 degrees clockwise, I know X and Y did not flip, but I do know there was a sign change for both. So all I'm really going to have to say is that X and Y both signs change. That's it. No flip. Okay. So then that brings us into 270 degrees, right? And actually, I'm probably not even going to do that in this video. Okay, so really quickly, I want to go ahead and point out something. Okay, so 180 degrees clockwise, well, you can probably already guess 180 degrees counterclockwise is precisely the same thing as 180 degrees counterclockwise. So clockwise versus counterclockwise, exactly the same. Okay, if and only if we're talking about 180 degrees. Okay, so that does it for this video as far as rotations clockwise, 90 degrees versus 180. We'll sum everything up in what would that be? In a fourth video as far as 270 and 360. If you have any questions about clockwise rotations, obviously come see me. Goodbye.